Hi everyone, welcome to today's lesson. We're going to continue looking at the things that you have to consider when you're living on your own. So last week we looked a little bit at that first step, looking at different apartment and house share options. What do those look like? What kind of things are ideal to you? Today and tomorrow we're going to take some time looking at roommate options, who you're going to fill that apartment or house share with. Again, finding your own place right out of high school can definitely be tough, or even right out of college. Living with roommates is something that's becoming much more common for people when they first get out of school. And then where we'll head at the end of this week and into next week is looking at a lease and what do you do once you decide to sign that. So this step of looking at roommates is really important because when we get to this next step of signing a lease, usually leases run at least a year. So whichever person you're choosing, you're stuck with that person for a year. So you want to make sure that you take the time to see if that's someone that you're going to be able to live with and that you're going to be happy living with. So today our goal is to consider what traits are most important when finding a roommate. So there's an article that's attached to this assignment, but I'm going to go through most of the questions with it. And it focuses on living in New York, but a lot of the questions apply to everything. So the article goes through just a bunch of different questions that you would ask your roommate. So in today's assignment, first we're going to think about which of these questions do you think are most important for you to ask a potential roommate. So that's what the questions we'll be asking. So throughout the lesson, I'll just be going through each question and talking about it a little bit, and then you'll have those more detailed descriptions under them that you can look at in the actual assignment. So there's kind of two different categories of things to think about, the social things and then the practical things. So we have two of them here. So like number one, how often do you clean? Cleaning is something that you might not think about when you're living with your parents. They sometimes tell you how often to do it, or they don't come into your room. But once you're living with someone and you're both the adults in that place, your cleaning habits are going to come into play. You're going to be sharing common space in your living room, in your kitchen. And if you guys don't match up on that, you don't have a schedule on that, it can definitely cause bitterness between roommates. So definitely something helpful to talk about beforehand. And then on the social side, something like what do you do on weekends? It's helpful if you have shared interests, but if you don't, maybe just finding out if, and in here they talk about being a party animal or a homebody. It can be hard if one of you is staying up until 2 a.m. and one of you is waking up at 6 a.m. the next day. So trying to find someone with similar-ish schedule or social habits to you can definitely be helpful. And number two leads kind of into number three. Do you like to have friends over or keep the party outside? So having people in your place that you don't necessarily want, if you're a more quiet person, can be really intrusive. So setting up those expectations before going into the living situation can be helpful. Smoking, it's hard to live with someone who smokes if you don't smoke. It's something that the smell can get on a lot of things. If you have parents who smoke, you're familiar with it, that may make you more willing to have someone who's a smoker, or if you are a smoker, you want to make sure that someone that you're going to live with is going to be comfortable with that. That also goes to drinking. Again, back to the social, back to the partying. Drinking might come more into play after college or in your later years of college, but if you're living with someone who's older, it's something to ask about. You also want to learn about some of their things that are in the past, and questions will deal with this a little bit later too. But asking if they're still friends with their old roommates, if they had some kind of falling out with them, maybe they're going to have some kind of falling out with you, and you want to know kind of what does their past look like. And that leads into the idea of references. When we think about references, we often think about for a job, but this is almost, if not more important, like you're going to be spending more time around this person than you do at your job. Like you want to see what kind of people they've kept in good standing with so that they can vouch for them as a potential roommate. Bedtime, talked about that a little bit, so I'll kind of breeze past that one. Thinking about their work, both of you, one, need to have jobs so that you can pay the bills, so you want to make sure they're reliable that way. If you're signing a lease, you are depending on this person to be paying their side, because if they don't, then it's going to hurt your credit, it's going to hurt your financial standing and your place to live. Even if you're living with a friend that you already know, I would still ask these questions, maybe not in as formal of a way if it's someone that you don't really know that well, but even if you're living with a friend, you want to know these things. Like you probably have an idea of their job, but maybe talking about like how long is their work day, seeing how long they're going to be in and out of the place that you live at. If your work schedules are similar, someone's working overnight hours and you're working daytime hours, that can be tough as roommates. Out-of-town visitors, similar to having the party over, are they going to have friends over? And more importantly, their romantic situation. Sometimes people have a significant other and they think that that person's going to be staying over all the time, and it's kind of having a third roommate who's not paying. So you want to make sure that you set up the expectations of that and what's appropriate and what's not. Back to the financial, can you put down a deposit? You want to make sure that you're not the only one that's financially reliable for the place that you're living at. And this becomes where, especially if it's a friend, you might be thinking that you're doing them a favor, but you want to make sure that you're both equally invested in what you're doing. How long do you plan to stay? And you can see it talks about New York here. But wherever you are, the way leases work is they typically start with a year. Some places you have to continue to sign 1-year leases, but some places will go month to month after that. So you can, for those first 12 months, you can't leave. They won't let you leave without continuing to pay. You need to make sure that they're financially and their lifestyle is planning to allow them to stay. And then again, with these next questions, looking at their past. So what are challenges you faced in past living situations? What are your pet peeves? Because you're not only seeing if they're the right person, you're seeing that you're a good fit for them. And these questions are a good place to start. And the last one, you can give them something open-ended. Anything else I should know? So what things haven't you covered in these questions? And hopefully they're going to have similar questions for you. You want to make sure that they're taking this situation seriously. So today, with this assignment, I would kind of, in your head, pick out 2 or 3 that are the most important. You say, oh yeah, like I really need to know about their work schedule, or I really need to know about their social schedule, or about whether they smoke or drink. Having those things around me would not be a great influence on me. So picking out the 3 that are the most important is a good place to go before tomorrow's assignment, where you're going to actually be looking at roommate options and picking out which one works the best for you. Having these questions in mind will help with that process.